So, I'm Martin, I'm your travel advisor, and today we are at one of the absolute coolest museums in Stockholm. This is the Vasa, and that is the ship that you see behind me here. You'll notice that it is a beautiful, beautiful old wooden ship. She is what in the age of sail would be considered a ship of the line. So she is designed as a ship that was a warship, and she was incredible. So Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden decided that he was going to expand his navy and make himself a naval power as well as a land-based power. And when he did that, he began the plans for the Vasa. And the Vasa was completed in 1628, and there were already some issues with stability when she was completed. They knew that these were issues. They knew that this was a thing. But she sailed on her maiden voyage in 1628, and when she left the harbor, she made it exactly 1,400 meters. And as she was moving that 1,400 meters, there was a gust of wind that pushed her over, and everybody had like a little mini panic attack because all the gun ports were open. As you can see right here, all the gun ports are still open on the Vasa. And when that wind gust happened, she keeled over a little bit, and then as she keeled over, she righted herself, and everybody thought everything was fine. But what wound up happening was there was another big gust of wind, and that second gust of wind essentially pushed her to a point where the lower gun ports started taking on water. And at this point in history, there wasn't a fast way to solve this problem. So as the water was coming in through the gun ports, everybody started to panic. The ship started to sink. So she sank on her maiden voyage right off of the island of Skeppsholmen, which is where we are standing right now. Not that far from here, as a matter of fact. In the 1950s, there were expeditions and excavations. She was found in the condition that you see her behind me for the most part. And when she was found, she was raised up. There was a huge process for that. They developed a process going in, sucking out all the silt and all the dirt. And the reason that she's been found pretty much intact, the way that you see her here, is because we have what is called brackish water in the Stockholm Archipelago. Brackish water is water where woodworm can't survive. So, because woodworm can't survive in the water, it preserves old wooden ships like this. This is why we have Viking vessels. This is why we have Vasa's sister ship, which has been found. She was found earlier, late last year, early this year. Now, the other thing to notice here is that, so she was a success in the sense that she was a massive warship, exactly what the king wanted, but an absolute failure in the fact that she sunk right away. Now, you'll notice the darker wood, the wood that looks really weathered and worn, and then if we look sort of up here at the top, you'll see lightly brown colored wood. The lightly brown colored wood is where they've done restoration. That's newer wood to show what she looked like in her original state when she sailed. All of the rigging ropes are pretty much original rope that they found on her. They've revamped a lot of it. They've redone a whole bunch of the rigging rope as well, using the same techniques that were used at the time. Now, Vasa was supposed to be Gustavus Adolphus's triumph, and instead it turned out to be a fiasco. And part of the reason it was a fiasco was the king was involved in the design. The king wanted certain things, and the shipbuilders said, yeah, we're not really sure about that. But they went ahead and did it anyways, because obviously the king couldn't be wrong. And afterwards, there was a big trial, and the shipbuilder was found responsible for essentially building an inferior product, even though at the trial it kind of came out that the person who was really responsible for all of this was the king, and you can't do anything against the king, so therefore it just is what it is. But this is the Vasa, this is the front of the Vasa, this is what you see when you come into this museum. It's an amazing place to visit. When you come to Stockholm, this is one of your must-see items, and I cannot recommend this museum enough. So, you'll see a few different views of the ship in a little bit, or in a later video perhaps, but come to the Vasa Museum. Absolutely a high recommendation. So as I mentioned, the museum stands on the island of Skeppsholmen and is not that far from where Vasa sank. You saw a picture of the museum right at the beginning of this episode. The entry is about 230 kroner, which is about 21 euros or $24. Now, the inside of the museum is kept fairly humid. This is to preserve the Vasa, but the humidity has gone down quite a bit. It used to be much higher, but now it is brought down to about 53% humidity, and the internal temperature is between 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, which is between 64 to 68 Fahrenheit. So what makes the Vasa so important? Simply put, the chief survived on the seabed for as long as she did. During the middle of the 17th century, Sweden had risen to become a power in the Baltic region, and it's generally recognized as Sweden's age of greatness. And no single monarch sort of embodies this more than Gustav II Adolf, who, as mentioned, was Gustavus Adolphus. So two major naval defeats plagued Sweden. The first was in 1627 when they lost two warships, Tigern and Solen, or the Tiger and the Sun, and this was followed the following year by the loss of Kristina and Riksnyckeln, or the Key of the Realm, and of course the Vasa herself. Vasa is named after the royal dynasty to which Gustavus Adolphus belonged, and unlike all modern ships which bear a name, the Vasa had the crest of the Vasa dynasty in two main places. One is the coat of arms on her stern, which is a beautiful piece of artwork, and you'll see in just a moment, and I do apologize that the video is very dark. And the other is the Vasa emblem, which is a sheaf of wheat on her bowsprit. So, welcome back. We are now at the tail end of Vasa. We are looking at the back end of the ship. I'm going to move it in here so you guys can see what I see. And right here in the center, right there, you have the emblem of the Kings of Vasa. Right there underneath that crown, that is the emblem of the Kings of Vasa. So that is the ship's name, Vasa. That was the name of the dynasty that Gustavus Adolphus belonged to. And as I scroll up here, as I move up here, you can see that emblem yet again, right underneath the crown, inside the emblem of Sweden, supported by those two Nordic lions. And you can tell here, all of the dark bits are original. The lighter bits, like that angel there over on the side, is newer artwork. And you can see here the beauty and the amount of artistry and the craftwork that went into building this ginormous and wonderful ship. And it's such a shame that she didn't make it any further than she did. But this is the back end of Vasa, and this is a close-up. This is as close-up as we can get. You can see here, looking down this way, between those two statues, you can see the inside. So you can see that even inside of her, she's still very well preserved for what she is. Now, there are some issues happening with her. The polyethyl glycol that they used as a preservative is starting to have some deteriorous effects, so they're having to find ways to counteract that. The iron nails that were in her originally were starting to eat away at the wood, so they had to pull out every single iron nail and replace them with titanium nails, made in the same way that they were made originally back in the 1600s. So they look and feel like the original iron nails, even though they're now made of titanium, which does not degrade as fast and does not degrade the wood. So this is a massive, massive preservation effort, and it's a massive, massive thing that's important for the country of Sweden. This is our incredible, incredible ship of history, and the amount of history that we've learned from this ship is continuous and ongoing. So this is Vasa. For comparison, the USS Constitution had about the same firepower as the Vasa, but she was 700 tons heavier. So 169 years obviously made quite a difference, not only in naval design, but also in the mathematics involved. And if you compare the two ships, you'll notice that the Constitution is a nice, sleek, flat hull, whereas the Vasa's is curved. This has to do with the fact that back in the 17th century, when Vasa would have sailed, battles were fought by individual ships. So each one had to sail and act independently, unlike the Constitution and her sister ships, which would have fought more in squadron formation or in the Constitution as an individual raider. But because of this, that curved hull on the Vasa is important because it meant that you could fire in multiple different directions. So here we are now again looking over the Vasa. we're looking over the main deck of Vasa. I'm going to bring the camera around again so that you're looking at what I'm seeing and you're seeing what I'm seeing. And what you're seeing here is the main deck. This is the deck where, you know, a lot of things would be happening on, and you've got gun ports on this deck. You've got the arches and the doorways into the stern castle of the ship. You've got the forecastle, and you'll notice this bridge that connects where I am standing to the ship itself. This is because the ship is still an active archaeological site. They are still making discoveries. They are still learning about the ship. They're still learning about shipbuilding from this era, and this is where they come to do that. And there's a lot that goes into learning about the type of building that they did on the ship. There's a lot that goes into learning about the life of people that lived on board, how ships were built at the time, how they sailed. But one of the fascinating things that you can see here is they've done a good job of putting the rigging back up. So you can see what the rigging looked like. Obviously, again, mostly newer ropes that they've done in the same classic old style, but the block tackles and things like that, especially the dark ones, are still all original. When we look at the main mast here, the mast that's right in the center, you'll notice right above the deck there's a series of hemp rope. And then you go up and there's another set of coil of hemp rope, and then a third and a fourth. The problem with Vasa was the fact that her center of gravity, which should have been down at that first gun deck, was up by that second set of ropes. That made her very top heavy. You'll notice if you look at this ship that she's very narrow. She did not have enough of a base for the ballast that she carried. She didn't have enough of a base for the sails that she carried. She didn't have enough of a base for the guns that she carried. And part of the issue was that the king constantly wanted bigger and heavier guns for this ship. So as he kept changing things throughout the design process, she became more and more unstable. And when they tested the stability of the ship, which at the time and at the day, what they did was they would have people run from one side of this deck to the other to see how far the ship rocked. The people had enough time to run 3 times before the test was canceled. That is how unstable she was, without ballast, without cannons. Imagine adding all of that in, not adding enough ballast, not having enough of a width to actually be able to counteract any of that. And then you can sort of understand what the problems with Vasa were from her construction. And a lot of this was due to the fact that the king wanted his input, wanted to be the Renaissance man, if you will, and as a result of that, wound up essentially sabotaging his own project. The king could not be held responsible, of course, because you can't hold the king responsible. So at the end of the day, who was held responsible for this? From the inquest, nobody. But it is what it is. And this here, this beauty here, this is Vasa. And there's one other thing that we're going to look at. I'm just going to keep talking while I walk. And that is right here. And this is what you see at the front of the ship, the sculpture that you see at the front of the ship. And again, this is important because right here at the front, you have the crest of the Vasa family. And that again is what gives the ship its name. Gustavus Adolphus was the second to last monarch of the Vasa family. His daughter would be the last. His daughter took over after he was killed at the Battle of Lützen in 1632, and then she was the regent of Sweden, and she was the last Vasa monarch that Sweden had. And this symbol right here in the center, this is the symbol of Vasa. This then brings us to the end of this episode, and I do hope that you've enjoyed this visit to the Vasa, and I hope that I've enticed you to visit her whenever you find yourself in Stockholm. The Vasa is, in many respects, the Titanic of her day, and a monument to hubris and partial folly. That is, however, where the comparison ends. Had she been built wider, she likely would have survived, and we would have been deprived of an amazing archaeological find. So thank you for joining me on this first YouTube episode of Globetrotting with Links. I tried to tie it into the podcast. I can't guarantee that the future ones will be, but I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I did actually visiting the Vasa, and I hope that you join me on the next episode. So thank you very much, and thank you for joining this first YouTube video of Globetrotting with Lynx. I am your host, Lynx. I am also a travel advisor with Fora. You can reach me at martin.lessem@fora.travel. That's martin.lessem at fora, fora.travel, travel. I'm more than happy to help you come up with your own amazing travel dreams and to make those come true. So until next time, please keep having amazing travel adventures and enjoy your own globetrotting. This is Lynx saying travel safe and have fun.